Hey YouTube, Sean at Top 5 Fit. First of all, I want to apologize for appearance. I just got through with second hour-long session of cardio. I kind of messed up and signed up for something I had no business signing up for, but it's all in the interest of experimentation, so we'll talk about that in another video. But the whole point of me standing here gross and smelly is all of you do that. You know, if you're training and putting in a real effort towards actually improving yourself, improving your body, improving your mind, improving your feel, like basically making the best version of you that you possibly can, creating the best body, the best mind, the best presence that you possibly can, you're going to go through some difficult times. You're going to go through some change. You're going to go through some uncomfortable periods in your conditioning and in your transition. So what I'd like to go over today are 5 supplements that I feel have probably the greatest impact on how you move through this journey of becoming a better you. So starting off with, and I know this is probably not the first one that every other video out there would start off with, but you know, I, as a 1,000-year-old athlete, I try to make sure that, you know, I'm very realistic about what I'm doing as well as what I'm suggesting to my clientele. So number 1 on the list for me is Thermagenics, speed, caffeine, yohimbe root ginseng, whatever, you know, proprietary blend that you particularly use. This is kind of a important thing for me. Now, I'm not a big coffee drinker, so right away I know I'm going to hear people say you should just have a couple of cups of coffee throughout the day. Well, personally, I don't like to dose caffeine like that. I like to use it, basically take it, use it, and then get rid of it. As far as the body's concerned, that's kind of how I've always seen things. It's a very put the nutrient in, utilize it, process it, and then get rid of the waste. And every ounce of that process is important. So when it comes to things like Thermagenics, caffeine, ephedra, whatever the case may be, I don't like that stuff just lingering around in the system and just, you know, not being utilized. So I really only take this stuff early mornings, and it's usually right before bouts of cardio because I'm on an empty stomach. And you know, it's very noble to stand here and tell you that you should be training at 4 o'clock in the morning because, you know, you're motivated and, you know, you want to do this. But the reality is this: if you've been getting up at 3:30 and 4 o'clock in the morning for what amounts to basically years, your motivations are going to change. And at some point, you're probably going to need a little bit of help to get out and get the work done. That's where the caffeine kicks in for me. If I have a 15 to 20 mile bike ride in the morning, or I'm supposed to get anywhere from a 3 to an 8 mile run, whatever the case may be, I'd like a little extra kick to kind of get the gears going, warm the body up, you know, give the blood a chance to move a little faster while I'm stretching, warming up before I head out for activity. So, and it's not that I'm relying on these supplements to get me through the workout. The idea is I need to be able to hit certain levels, certain peak levels of output while training. And if that doesn't happen, then the training session is kind of wasted. So at those particular times of the day, for me, Thermagenics work. Now, for yourselves out there, that's obviously something that you're going to have to play with. You're going to want to kind of test the waters, so to speak. So maybe if you're not a morning person, I would watch how much you're actually taking early in the morning. You know, the jitters are real, the shakes are real. There's plenty of videos out there about what happens when you take too much pre-workout. So for me, it's always a dabble do you. You know, if the bottle says take 2 pills, I'm taking 1, and that's just how it works. And I'll ride that for probably a solid month or so, just to make sure I have a full understanding of what this supplement is doing in my body and how it's actually making me perform at that time of the day. Outside of that, I really don't go after it any other time. Even the pre-workouts for the lifts later on in the afternoon, it's usually just some protein shakes and a little bit of water, maybe some amino acids, and it stops there. So even though I am a fan of Thermagenics, caffeine, ephedra, I am very particular about when it's actually going in during the day. Sleep is a very important thing to me, and I try to keep things away from sleep because if you're not sleeping, you're not healing. So you pay attention to that rotation. Number 2, protein. So kind of a hot topic in the fitness industry right now. Everybody is, how much protein do I take? What kind of protein do I take? You know, weighs the devil, weighs not the devil. You know, what about casein if I want 6 hours worth of protein rolling through my bloodstream? Well, I'm a vegan, I'm not taking any of that. look, at the end of the day, there are all kinds of equations out there that tell you how much protein you should be taking in. A good rule of thumb to follow, 0.75 to 1.25 grams of protein per pound of body weight. Now, that again is a range. I did not give you a specific number. So according to your goals and what you're actually trying to accomplish, that's something that you're going to want to play with over time. Personally, and again, I talked earlier about taking these supplements all year round, but subbing in different types. So I'm not a vegan. I don't have anything against vegans, but I'm not a vegan. However, that doesn't mean that there isn't anything to be gained from vegan protein. So I have a website that I go to that I actually blend and create my own protein powder. Now, from a financial standpoint, you can best bet that that handmade, fresh created protein blend that I put together for myself from this website is a lot pricier than the 5 to 6 pound jug that I may pick up at Sam's Club or Target or something like that. That tub, by the way, is usually whey. So with all of the research that has come out on whey being, anything dairy oriented being, an inflammatory type food item, it can create mucus in your system. And, if you've got small issues, they can create, turn into bigger issues because you're simply adding dairy in. At the same time, whey was a foundation. I grew up on whey, and it never really upset me the way a lot of people seem to think that it does. So I'm not going to get rid of it. However, if I am going, say, 3 months on 6 pounds or so or more worth of whey, the next 3 months I switch over to my vegan blend. And then I go back and forth. So when it comes to how you actually cycle your proteins in and out of your year, consider that. There's the all-time kick around, whether it's Muscle Tech, whether it's Optimum Nutrition, just to throw a couple of names out there, or, you're going after this particular blended protein, which in my case is an egg white, a beef, there's no whey whatsoever. I do an avocado oil powder for an essential fat to throw in there, as well as extra protein, digestive protein enzymes to go along with that. So, it's quite involved. But again, you can see where the price starts to jump. So trying to keep the dollars in mind, I like to rotate through those. And that also falls in line with my whole diminished returns, concept on if you're taking the same supplement for too long, you're not going to get as much out of it towards the end as you did in the very beginning. So still taking protein, still adding those grams into the already existing diet, but I get that rotation of what type of protein happens, throughout the year. So something to think about when it comes to what you're actually putting into your diet as far as the protein is concerned. Number 3, EFAs. I touched on that a little bit with the avocado oil powder that comes in the pre-blended, protein powder that I like to make. Essential fatty acids are very important in terms of, nutrition transport throughout your body. How do you think those carbs actually get to the muscle tissue? How do you think the protein actually gets to the muscle tissue? It's usually riding on the back of some good fat. Well, there's good fats and there's bad fats, and we understand that, but I'm primarily talking about the good fats right now. And coming back to that, cycling in different kinds of essential fatty acids, I will roll through in a given year, and it's just very comfortable in my mind to break the year up into 3 and 4 month blocks. So for my essential fatty acids, I tend to break things up into 4 month blocks, which means for the first 4 months, I'll use a fish oil or a krill oil of some kind. For the next, I'll move on to a CLA, corrugated linoleic acid, and then finally wrap up with maybe a flaxseed oil or, to pick up my almond intake or something along those lines. But as you can see, I'm still filling that category of essential fatty acids into the diet, but I'm not necessarily using the same one. So the variety is still there, so I'm keeping that diminished returns concept at bay. So some things to think about there. The other thing, as far as essential fatty acids are concerned, earlier we talked about nutrient transport. They also help with that whole feeling foggy throughout the day. So I talk to a lot of clients who sit on their butts quite a bit. They have desk jobs, and right around the middle of the day, or especially right after lunch, they feel really foggy and they don't understand why. And then I ask them what they had for lunch. oh, well, I had a salad and I held back as much fat as possible and I drank some, strawberry water because, I wanted fiber. I'm trying to control my blood sugar, but the fat is not there because basically somewhere along the lines people have drilled into their heads that all fat is bad. Well, fat also lines your nerve endings. There's a little structure called a myelin sheath that basically helps with energy conduction and message transfer as far as your nerves are concerned. And that myelin sheath is made up of lipids. And where do you think those lipids come from? Lipids are fats, and if you're running a very low fat diet or you're not getting in the right fats kind of thing, you can see where the brain's going to get a little sluggish. Your ability to react is going to get a little sluggish. Anything that has to do with your central nervous system essentially slows down. So something to think about when you're going after what supplements should I add into my system. EFAs, it's definitely a good idea. Number 4, fiber. I am a big fan of fiber. Fiber has helped me with quite a few of my childhood cravings that I haven't been able to get rid of. For example, I don't know about how many of you out there understand the struggle as to when it comes to the sweets before bed. I have a sweet tooth. I fight it consistently. I crave sugar, especially with the more cardio I do. I have a tendency to want carbohydrates, and I have to mentally focus on feeding myself fats, and ever the mileage goes up in any kind of endurance activity for me, weight gain actually goes up. Now, I know that doesn't make sense, especially considering the majority of this country believes cardio burns fat. Cardio can become a threatening thing to your structure, and I've talked about this in other videos. When you start threatening your body, before fat was considered unattractive, it was a protective mechanism, and it stored energy. So if I'm out blowing 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 calories because I feel the need to run some ridiculous race or go on some ridiculous long bike ride, the body's not going to necessarily see that as oh, okay, he's just working out, let's go ahead and drop the fat. They're going to see it as, oh, something's wrong, we've just dropped a lot of calories, let's go ahead and add a little bit more body fat next time just to make sure if he does it again, we don't have to worry about going into such a deficit. Well, that doesn't exactly fall in line with the I want to lose body fat thing. Well, fiber helps out with that. 2 types of fiber in particular, soluble and insoluble. Not really going to go into the differences that much, but I will say this, both of them help keep you regular, and that's important. You don't want buildup and backup. When it comes to being able to shed body fat and ultimately drop body weight overall, you don't want a lot of sludge being held up in your intestines and whatnot, especially, if you're eating a little heavier. I have a tendency to consume a lot of animal product, animal meat, eggs and whatnot. So I like a lot of fiber to go behind it to help move that through. If you're drinking the amount of water that you're supposed to be taking in, that soluble fiber will ultimately help absorb a lot of that excess water, and it keeps you regular. Now you're not battling with things like hemorrhoids or, constipation, that kind of stuff. Things are moving, and that's what's important. The more efficiently things can move through your system, the more efficient your metabolism becomes, the less likely for fat cell hangers-on sticking around on your body. So something to think about. The other thing you kind of want to keep in mind when it comes to fiber, whenever you get buildup and backup and sludge in your intestinal walls, in your colon, and so on and so forth, a really funky adaptation that takes place in your body is you start to develop things to feed on that sludge. And in some cases, those are known as polyps. And that's not good because that's basically a precursor to cancer. So when you're talking about why is fiber good, it's not just helping to control your appetite. It's not just kind of, keeping you regular and keeping things moving. That's not the only thing that's going on. You're also keeping the pipes clear. You're keeping things pristine, if you will, as put by another client of mine who, whenever they finish up their colonoscopies, that's usually the report they get. Everything is pristine. Well, that's kind of where you want to be. You don't want a bunch of backup and buildup because that's when problems can occur. So your fiber count, keep it nice and high. And as far as what you're subbing and using in for fiber, that's something that you can actually kind of just stick with. Personally, I use Metamucil. To get back to that sweet craving, at the end of the day, I use the Metamucil with, the fake sugar, sometimes the real sugar. It's, I just go back and forth between the two. And I add a touch of apple cider vinegar for the acidity, and that tastes like a big glass of orange juice to me. And that is a nice sweet hit to the palate right before bed. Meanwhile, I'm getting about, I don't know, 25, 30 grams of fiber that's helping to clean things out before you're actually getting into the next day. So decent practice as far as I want to clean things out. I want to make sure that blood ways are moving properly and I'm not, accumulating a bunch of excess gunk into my system. So fiber, number 4, very important. Last and not least, probably one of the most understated supplements, at least in the world, in my opinion, vitamin C. I don't know if in the beginning of this video I might have led you to believe that I was going to talk about the latest and greatest steroid or the latest and greatest, bit of, blood doping tech. It's not, no, vitamin C. What we're talking about here is an immune system booster, an antioxidant, and an anti-inflammatory. So these are 3 things right off of the bat that if you are a serious athlete at all, not only do you want to make sure you don't get sick, things don't get inflamed, all right, and you're not building up, toxins in your system that could, on the back end, create problems later on down the road. This is kind of a one thing catches all problem supplement, and it's, it gets flushed out with water. It's not something that's going to build up in your system to toxic levels and become a problem, and it's everywhere. Now, before I go any farther, there's obviously people out there who have acidity issues. Some people may have problems in the gut, problems in the throat. These things can, excessive amounts of vitamin C can create canker sores and throat irritation, so on and so forth. So, coming back to my original concept of a dab will do ya, I start with 1,000 milligrams at 250 pounds. I'll pop another 1,000 milligrams in the middle of the day. So that's where I'm sitting because I know that doesn't upset me. I can do it consistently and everything feels fine. Now for you may want to start with a 500 milligram pill. If you want to, or a tablet or a chewable, and see how that actually affects your system, especially if you have sensitivities towards acid. Having said all of that, those are my top 5 supplements. To recap real quick, we're looking at Thermagenics early in the morning to help with the early morning training. We're looking at protein powder, of course. You want to make sure that you're supplying the necessary building blocks and supporting the work that you're doing in the gym. We're looking at the essential fatty acids, nutrient transport, keeping you clear, making sure you're not getting that fog, as well as appetite control. Fiber, you got to run the pipes clean. You've got to make sure that you're controlling your appetite through other means than just willpower. If you've got a gut full of fiber, you're not necessarily going to want the cheeseburger. And finally, vitamin C. And again, we haven't talked enough about how good vitamin C is, and maybe I'll have to do a video on vitamin C by itself. But antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, these are all things, that are definitely going to benefit today's athlete. So thanks again for watching. Thanks for giving me a little bit of time. I'll try not to be so disgusting and stinky next time. Thank God you can't smell me through the camera. But if you like what you see, make sure you hit like. Make sure you throw any comments in the box below if there's something that you want us to talk about, that you'd like me to go over. Make sure and put that in the comment box as well. And don't forget to subscribe because there's going to be more videos coming. Thanks again. Bye.